Welcome to another episode. Today we're looking at this guy right here. This K&N filter was used for a little over 18,000 miles and roughly for 13 months. So I'm curious to see how well it has performed. In other words, we'll cut open the filter, take a look at the components, and get a pretty good idea on how well this has performed. Now, very quickly before we begin, I'd love to hear back from you guys. Please leave a comment on what filters you would like to see. In other words, would you like to see some other filters brand new out of the box, what they look like, or even some other ones post or after usage? We do have two after usage videos, one frame extra guard after 6,000 miles. The other is a Purolator Boss. I believe that was around 12,000 miles. We'll keep on adding to the list as we go on here. So please leave a comment. Love to hear back from you guys. And that being said, let's begin. Okay, so a couple things right off the bat. Number one, this is a $9 filter on Amazon.com. If you're a Prime member, within 2 days you have your filter. Secondly, obviously, is just local, visit your local auto parts store. In other words, a lot of times you can find a deal for, let's say, $32, fully synthetic motor oil, and they include a K&N filter. But again, if you're looking just to get it on its own, it's a $9 filter on Amazon. Secondly, this is obviously the big difference with K&N versus other filters, and that's this 1-inch nut on top of the can. The key with this nut, it's really only for removal. Don't use this nut when you're installing the filter because you can crack the spot welds and develop a small leak. So don't do that. Only for removal. Very, very important. Now, the specific oil that was used in this case was Pennzoil fully synthetic motor oil. As you can see, still looks to be in good shape. It's not burned off. It's not tarnished. It's not a dark color. This filter you can run conventional, a blend, or fully synthetic motor oil, whatever floats your boat. Now, the specific vehicle this was on, it was a 2003 Honda Accord with a 2.4 liter VTEC. And for that specific vehicle, they recommend to change the motor oil every 1 year, 12,000 miles. So this is way over. You don't want to go over. Obviously, this is the lifeblood of your engine, the motor oil. But that being said, everything so far seems to be in good shape. Now, this is your anti-drainback valve. And typically what you find on your higher end oil filters is a silicone anti-drainback valve. And that's exactly what this is. The whole point behind this valve is when you shut off the engine, instead of having all the motor oil drain out of the filter, this valve retains the oil inside the filter. Now, the key with silicone is the temperature range. This can withstand temperatures down to, I believe it's around 100 degrees Fahrenheit and up to 400 degrees Fahrenheit. On your lower costing filters, you find nitrile rubber. And that's the advantage with silicone, is just specifically the lower and the higher temperature ranges that this can withstand. As you can see, it's still in good shape. The elasticity is very good. It's not discolored. Nothing is brittle. Still in very, very good shape. In other words, look how much pressure I'm putting on here, and it's not ripping. Very, very nice. This guy on top, this spring, this is just a compression tool in a sense. In other words, it keeps all of the components, everything here, nice and compact inside the filter. On your, I shouldn't say cheaper, every filter is really different, but typically you find a stamped piece of steel as opposed to this coil spring. I do like finding the coil springs because I imagine it costs a little bit more money to manufacture. Now, the can, this is also one very nice thing about K&N. It's a very, very strong can. After opening all of these filters for the last year or so, I would say K&N and Purolator Boss have the thickest cans I've come across. And that's nice for two reasons. Number one, if you're doing, let's say, off-roading and you're worried about puncture rates, in other words, just debris and rocks and everything else, this is a very, very thick can. The other thing is the burst pressure. The thicker the can, the higher burst pressure you'll have. In other words, the number of PSI this can withstand before it blows up. And the fact that it's a thick can is a really, really nice touch. Now, on top of the filter, you can actually see it right here. On top, you see how there's a spring here. This is a bypass valve. The whole point behind this bypass valve is if this filter ever clogs up and now it can no longer circulate the engine oil, this little valve here would open up, and unfiltered oil would at least get back in the engine. It's a safety feature. So another thing that you find here on the K&N oil filter. Now lastly, this is the filter itself, in other words, the media. Now this is a synthetic blended media, and every manufacturer is different. On these higher end filters, typically they'll either be a blend, in other words, it could be a blend of cellulose and fully synthetic. This is a synthetic blend. The whole reason why at least K&N chooses this media is for two reasons. Number one is the flow rate. In other words, very, very high flow rates, and at the same time, the filtration is very, very good. And lastly, what I'm looking for is to see if the filter was still doing its job on filtration. In other words, if I see any debris or some kind of blockage, I don't see anything in between these pleats. So everything looks to be in healthy shape. Now again, this was used for 13 months and 18,000 miles, 18,265 miles to be exact, or precise. And you don't want to go that long. Again, on this Honda, the service recommendation is 12,000 miles or 1 year. And again, everything looks to be in good shape with this filter. So I hope this gives you a pretty good idea on what you can expect from K&N. Again, if you'd like to see any other oil filters, please leave a comment. I would love to hear what you guys would like to see. Also, if you'd like to see anything different, in other words, when I go over these oil filters, if you'd like for me to point out something that I'm not mentioning, please leave it in the comment section. I'd love to hear back. If I'm missing anything, you'd like to see something different, please leave those comments. So thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.